know that I am recording this session and we're getting feedback, so I'm going to try to mute everyone again. But please, if you join in, please mute yourselves. And so I'm going to let everyone know, I just want to let everyone know that I am recording this session. And so this session will be shared in the community section of our Whova app. In addition to that, again, just keep yourselves muted, and then presenters, we're going to ask you to mute yourselves and unmute yourselves when you're ready to speak. We're going to start with a guided discussion, and then we'll, by each of the presenters, I'll have some questions that have been given to us for me to ask, and then we will turn this over into a Q&A session. I am going to also monitor the time so that we leave enough time for questions. And again, I will monitor the chat. So if you would have questions and you'd like to put them in the chat, I'll also try to ensure that our presenters get an opportunity to answer those questions. Additionally, I'm going to ask that our presenters keep an eye on the chat as well, because you may want to incorporate something that someone asked in your answer. So with that, I would like to go ahead and get started. I am going to ask our dynamic presenters to first introduce themselves. And I would like to start off with Crystal Bryant. And Crystal, would you please introduce yourself and share whatever you would like to share about yourself?
Sure. Thank you, Director Burkes. I think I was muted. Okay. My name is Crystal Bryant. I serve as the director for our Cuyahoga County Office of Reentry. Most people cannot pronunciate Cuyahoga County if you are not from the greater Cleveland area. So if you are from our great state of Ohio and you're wondering where Cleveland is usually the city people most identify with, I've been the director in this space for almost 4 years when December 27th rolls around. However, I've been invested and involved with this particular population maybe 10 to 12 years ago when they first began this office. Went under the direction of Sandra Brazil at that time. I served as the member of our Reentry Coalition for over 12 years at this point. I was a full-time employee monitoring forensic individuals at the Athens board at the time of the start of the Office of Reentry and its implementation. Our office is primarily a funder. We do not provide direct services. However, we are also a convener, a thought leader, and influencer on all things reentry. I look forward to having this discussion with you all this afternoon. Thanks for having me. And if you guys need me to slow down, because I naturally speak fast, just put it in the chat.
Thank you so much, Director Crystal Bryant. I'm going to now ask Trina Jackson, Director Trina Jackson. We had a chance to hear from her earlier, and I'm so excited about hearing additionally from her now to introduce herself.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Yes, my name is Trina Jackson, Director of Reentry for Hamilton County. Hamilton County is actually the second largest contributor to the Ohio prison population. But one thing about Hamilton County is our commissioners are very invested in the reentry work so that we can slow that rate of commitment to our state prisons as well as our local jail. So our work really is designed to connect returning citizens with the resources in the community to either become stable or maintain their stability. But our commissioners also charge us with the responsibility of identifying strategies that reduce recidivism. And so not only do we provide this coordination of care for our clients, we also operate programs that are predominantly pre-release programs. We have 2 pre-release programs that are evidence-based practices, of course. You know, when you look at ways to reduce recidivism, pre-release planning is one of those ways. So we focus a lot of attention there. And then, you know, our staff is fairly, it actually very seasoned. Our staff is really diverse as far as the backgrounds are concerned. I've been with the office for 3 years, but the majority of our staff have been with the office for, you know, more than 4 or 5 years. So there's a great deal of knowledge in our office, and that's what really, I think, kind of gives us an advantage in our area in Hamilton County when it comes to working with clients and building those real strong relationships with them to maintain those interactions. So thank you. I'm looking forward to this.
Thank you, Director Jackson. We appreciate you. And I shared with Director Jackson earlier in her opening when she said about being funny. I told her to tell her daughter that she was funny. She accomplished her goal. So we appreciate that. Next, I would like to ask Sandy Mumford to introduce herself. Sandy, we're so happy to have you here today.
Additional challenges now, and especially for those.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Sandy.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Sandy Monfort. Honestly, I have been around in every capacity for juvenile and or adult other than working in a prison system or working in the Ohio Department of Youth Services. I always say to people that I've been around since the beginning of time. I started working in 1977. I'm from the great state of Tennessee, and I happened to marry a person who was wearing scarlet and gray. At the time, I thought he was from Oklahoma. So that's all a true story. Started in the juvenile system and now have worked in the adult system in a multitude of capacities. Was a chief probation officer at an intensive program for the county. Facilitated the worst center for multiple years until I was run over by a car. A significant accident in 2010. And prior to that, I was one of the participants of the facilities that got results back from the University of Cincinnati. And it indicated at that time that the worst center had scored poorly, which broke my heart. I thought we were doing great. The emphasis was that the relationship building upon release was important. And that had to, in fact, be more solidified. So little did I know after my accident and trying to recuperate, learning how to walk and talk, I found that I wasn't returning back to my position because I was unable to, because of the physical damage and traumatic brain damage I had. I found out just a little bit later that I would be given a small opportunity, a little bit at a time, to work in reentry. Knowing what that report said, knowing that that was one area in Allen, Auglaize, and Hardin County that we weren't strong in, now I had another area that I would hope I could be able to help facilitate and make a difference, connecting a lot of agencies and organizations. So I work out of Coleman Professionals, which is in different segments in Ohio. I'm at the Allen, Auglaize, and Hardin County office, the main office, the largest office of Coleman. Reentering individuals from prison, from CBCFs, from the jail, from those individuals that have been back and just are having a difficult time connecting. So we do a lot of connecting, that relationship building, the face-to-face conversation with individuals. For me, number one, because I remember that's what needed to be stronger. And so I've been blessed in the community to be able to work with a multitude of communities that help connect and make that face-to-face, letting people know we're glad to have them back, and let's see what we can do to help walk with them along the way. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. And we appreciate the work that we do, that Sandy does. She is a great community partner to our office. And so now I would like to invite Kysten Palmore to introduce herself. Kysten has been a great, just a tremendous help to me when I was a warden and now in my current position. So Kysten, I'm so excited to have you here today.
Thank you, Ronnie. I'm excited to be here. My name is Kysten Palmore. I am the Deputy Director for Community Engagement and Reentry for the Ohio Department of Youth Services. I spent 10 years, little over 10 years, working for the local reentry coalition in Franklin County, which I love dearly, and I didn't think I would find anything else that I would love more. But working with young people it gives me a spark and it gives me hope. And I really want to thank Reba for having me on to talk about the juvenile correctional and reentry. We often get ignored because people forget that there are juvenile correctional facilities. We operate a little different than the adult correctional facilities, but nonetheless, youth who are coming out of our correctional facilities, which we have 3 in the state of Ohio, have the same barriers to reentry as adults. They're just younger. So I'm excited to be able to talk about this. And one of the things that, if I could leave one nugget for anyone to understand is that when the youth come out, when they come home, they're not monsters. I think people always think that if a youth has gone into a facility, they must have done something horrendous. And oftentimes that does occur, but it's not because of the fact that they are bad people. They just did not have the same opportunities that everyone else has. And I always say this, whether it's adults or youth, that the universe gives everyone equal talents, skills, and abilities, but not everyone has equal opportunities to fulfill their destinies. And that's what happens with our young people. They just need to know that somebody loves them, cares about them, understands them, believes them, will be there when they said they're going to be there. And above all, they're kids. So I'll leave you with that. And I look forward to participating in this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Kirsten. We appreciate you being the voice of our juveniles. And then last but certainly not least, I'd like to invite Shawn Stover, who is a true gentleman. He let all the ladies go first. And so, Shawn, I'd like to invite you to the mic to speak and to thank you for also being here and being a great community partner.
Thank you, Ronnie, and I appreciate the invite. I'm Shawn Stover. Looks like I got muted again. I'm the Athens County Reentry Coordinator and the Athens County Task Force Chairperson, working through Athens County Job and Family Services out of our Ohio Means Job Center. And cannot say enough about Ohio Means Jobs and what we do to help people get back on their feet and help people with employment. Been working with the Reentry program for about 6 years now, and with Job and Family Services for 23 years. And this has been the best, most heartfelt job I've had as far as feeling that I'm filling a true need in our community. The special thing about Athens County is that being a smaller rural community, we depend on our community. We depend on our community members and our organizations to help us with the reentry process, because reentry happens in the churches, reentry happens in the libraries, it happens at the recovery centers, it happens everywhere. So I can't say enough about the Athens community and their holistic approach about helping people in reentry and recovery.
Thank you, Shawn. So let's dive right into our session. So our men and women who are returning from prison are often unseen. They are a shadow population. These members of our community are intersecting and relying upon systems that have changed dramatically. Reentry in its best of times is challenging, and during the pandemic, these challenges have gotten even greater. So thinking about that, and Shawn, I'll start with you since I had you go last. From your perspective, where gaps have widened, where have gaps widened, and are there any gaps that have actually decreased?
The gaps I've noticed, especially lately, that have widened are the connections with the like the state agencies that generally were open to the public. I'll use Social Security, which is a federal agency, but I'll use Social Security as an example. Trying to get a person a Social Security card took over a month, because you have to mail the information in, they have to approve it. It sits on their desk for 3 days before they can even open the letter. So if it's there on a Wednesday, they won't open it till the next week. These are things we kind of took for granted. On a normal day, you could go down there and they'd say, this won't work, you need this. Then you could go back later that day or the next day. So I think that's the gap with a lot of our very important agencies that have been kind of working from home, working remotely, and just with the automated services, which, as we all know, automated services are so frustrating. They're not set up for any kind of human connection. They're set up for business, and what we do is human connection. So a lot of times I have a person come in my office just to help them work through an automated service. That goes the same for Job and Family Services. Applying for Medicaid food stamps is not as easy as it used to be. In some ways it is, but then when the layoffs and the recession started hitting again, the bulk number of people on unemployment applying for food stamps bulked our systems up. So that's been the biggest kind of deficit, I think, that was caused by the coronavirus. And then in a positive sense, I've made connections with so many people across the state that I would not have been able to make connections with, especially ODRC. I attend maybe 2 or 3 meetings a week with ODRC. Helps me have a good understanding of what you guys are doing. You have a good understanding of what's going on in our communities. And I think that's been valuable for us to be able to share that information and create those connections. So to me, that's been the most positive thing.
Thank you so much, Shawn. I'd like to also ask Kysten if you would answer the same question.
So I think one of the gaps that we're seeing is that, and I think it was alluded to when we were in our community conversation, is that a lot of our, well, all of our volunteers have been relegated, if you will, to back home because there is no outside interaction inside of the facilities. And so it's really difficult trying to make those connections on the outside because we rely heavily on our community volunteers, our community social service organizations. And one of the things that I would suggest, if I could have an ask, and I'm probably jumping ahead, is that if there was someone who had some time just to begin to do an inventory of organizations that are community organizations and social service organizations that are still operating and are still willing to take on individuals coming into their facility. But one of the things that we often find out, and that was the reason why I said that, most people are really reluctant or reticent to take on juveniles, is that we find it very difficult for organizations who are youth focused to be willing to take on juveniles. So we rely heavily on OOD and OMAS, Office of Disabilities, and the Ohio Mental Health, and in the local task or the OMAS boards, because they are the ones that are willing to work with us, and they have the ability to come in. They also have the ability to do virtual engagement within the facilities. So that has helped tremendously. But one of the things I find out with the gap is, when youth were coming out during the hiding, like in March and April and May, school was out. So youth had a very difficult time getting all the tools that were necessary to make sure that youth could continue to go to school. And they often don't go back to their parent school. They often go to the adult school or charter school and getting the equipment that they needed to ensure that they were in school. So that was a huge gap. And also, during the height of the pandemic, there were no parole officers doing face-to-face visits. So they had to do phone visits a great deal. So those were the major gaps. And just being able to have that connectedness. One of the things that, as a reentry and a community engagement is engaging the community. And one of the things that, I would always say is if I was in my office, a whole week, then I wasn't doing my job, because my job is in the community making connections. And it's often difficult to make those connections virtually. So.
Thank you, Kirsten. And I think you brought up some very good points. I do want to share with you and everybody on the Zoom that the Office of Reentry actually accepted the challenge to gather information about community organizations. And we've been doing that for a while. So I'll make sure that, Kirsten, you get that information. But if anyone has updates about your status, please send it to the Office of Reentry, and I can post our email address, or I'll ask Roxanne to post her email address in the chat so that folks will have it, because we've been doing that for a while. And that's why forums like this are important too. I want to mention, just so you all will know, for whatever reason, I cannot read the messages in the chat. They are coming up encrypted. I can only read messages from Reba Collins. So folks may need to help me out with the chat. I would appreciate that. So Trina Jackson, I would like to ask, do you have anything else to add? I would love to hear your perspective on this question as well.
Thank you. From our perspective, we're seeing this widened gap in employment opportunities for our clients. In some cases, a number of them have been employed for long periods of time. Their background was not an issue because they had a consistent, stable employment history, but that's changed. You know, they're laid off or furloughed or just have lost their job altogether. So they're having to kind of start over in some regards. But the one thing about this, which is somewhat, it's an advantage, is that, you know, we have more interest and possibly investment from the private sector. Working with the chamber, they're creating these programs to help people kind of rebuild their repertoire of skills. So they have these new programs that are training people in these more marketable skills around IT and other things like that, so that they can kind of recreate their employment opportunities. So yes, it's a huge burden to not be employed, but I'm glad that, you know, we're able to connect with the private sector and they see the value of, you know, offering these opportunities to returning citizens. You know, yeah, I hate to even think about the fact that, you know, sometimes reentry communities last hire, last fire, you know, first fire, put it that way. So the idea of having this opportunity, I think, is extremely exciting, especially at this time, you know, where everybody's dealing with unemployment, and for our private sector to be receptive of the returning citizens and say, okay, yes, we want you to be a part of this program and be a part of our staffing because of that new skill that we're helping you gain. It's exciting to me. So yeah, so that's kind of one of the big gaps that we're seeing. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Crystal, are you seeing the same types of gaps in the Cuyahoga County and Cleveland area?
Thank you, Director Burkes, for the question. Yes and no. So the great thing about the great state of Ohio, it is so very unique across our 88 counties. There are some times that I am very proud to be in Cuyahoga County. There are other times I am jealous of my colleagues and some of the work they're able to accomplish and do, because Cleveland can often be so very different. So there are, I mean, I would like to just echo some of the things that they've already kind of discussed on here. Kirsten hit the nail on the head. And so in that space, we are fortunate in Cuyahoga County that we decided to kind of take up the task of doing an informal survey for our provider network. We use a tool called the Exodus Planner, and the Exodus Planner, we asked them to submit information to us. Then we were able to kind of upload it for those who had some level of business continuity. So it was an issue in our community we attempted to resolve. Did we do it perfectly? Probably not, but we definitely recognized that it was an issue. And even still, different organizations are active in different capacities and spaces. So they may be still in like phase one of like reopening their businesses, et cetera. So I think one of the biggest challenges, I mean, most of these things are across the board for us, is really access in Cuyahoga County. The service may be there, but the access to the service is what is like null and void or non-existent, because we have no control over organizations' capacity to reopen their doors, to also even really understand business continuity, because again, sometimes we have what we call mom and pop shops. It doesn't mean they're not quality, it just means they can't run a scale with some of the larger organizations who have the ability to do so and open their doors and be comfortable and confident that their staff will be safe and not face any penalties or liabilities. I think one of the challenges that haven't been spoken of or addressed, but I'm sure my colleagues and counterparts and even everyone on this call probably has experienced it, who works with those who are coming home with challenge with this particular barrier, is housing. I think one of the things that we are probably all lucky about is that I don't even think we've even begun to see the real impact of COVID. Not quite yet. I think our government, even at a federal level, has done a good job of consistently pumping resources into the community and economy. Philanthropy has kind of stepped up in spaces and took money out of different line items that they have never done before, but that can't be sustained. So preparing for this monster will be a beast. And so we haven't seen it yet, but what I'm anticipating, or some of the things that we've been challenged with, is the housing barriers. Obviously right now, I cannot pronunciate this right, so nobody laugh at me. What is it? Eviction, mama, whatever the N word is, right? So there's like this pause on allowing people to be evicted. But that pause won't last forever. It's not sustainable while the courts have been kind of closed as they begin to kind of reopen back up. Director Burkes has worked directly with me on this challenge here. As people were initially reentering, our homeless shelter is our safe space for those with sex offenses, et cetera, or those who simply just, it's been really difficult to make them employable. There may be some policy practices in communities that just doesn't allow them to get safe and stable housing. We can't rely on a homeless system like we normally do, which we shouldn't be, but it is our safe space because when something like COVID hits, they have to operate at a certain level of capacity. So that's an issue or challenge. They can't necessarily go home where they're not necessarily homeless, but to an unstable situation with the child's mother or someone who may not be a wife, et cetera, because if someone has that underlying healthcare condition, then you wanted to make sure you ensure their safety first in terms of healthcare. So it's just multiple challenges in terms of those housing gaps that were already crazy that were expanded during initially in COVID, which thank God we've been able to kind of work out. But in terms of its sustainability, I think that's what I'm more concerned about. And, seeing another spike in COVID numbers when there is no longer government dollars to consistently keep pumping resources into an already struggling economy, regardless of what people are saying we are on the verge of something real serious, in my opinion. That's not the county's opinion.
Thank you, Crystal. I get it. I definitely get it. And I think you brought up some great points. We've heard housing, we've heard employment, we've heard just community resources, gathering of community resources. And as you think about that, I would love to hear, Sandy, from your perspective, because you come from your agency is a little bit different than some of the other agencies that are part of this panel. So Sandy, can you just give us your perspective on this?
Sure. Thank you so much. I remember years ago when I was talking with the Mental Health Recovery Services Board, and I was letting them know locally that we really needed to work together with the criminal justice system and them, because whether they knew it or not, they had our clients. And I remember there was such a huge hesitation. There was being a push made by the state to get those two entities together. So in fact, we went down there and had a lunch. Now, who would know that years later, I would be contracting work out of the Mental Health Recovery Services Board, working specifically in reentry. And in fact, that the Mental Health Recovery Services Board would have become more and more involved with the client population of juveniles as well as adults that are not only in schools, they're in systems in our community. So as rural as we are, with Lima, Ohio being the metropolitan area for the 3 counties, if you can imagine that, there is tremendous support from the Mental Health Recovery Services Board. They've assisted us with creating Open Gate, which is an entity of agencies together in one area, so that a client coming home from any of those entities I talked about before can come and access directly information, connect with a person, and begin to work with them collaboratively, even with a first appointment. We've got several recovery homes that are either halfway houses or recovery homes, helping by being sponsored, not run by, but being sponsored by the Mental Health Recovery Services Board. So when an individual is in need of housing, when they're coming back out of one of those confining areas, we're able to give them a lift up with housing in some of these locations for a period of time until they get on their feet. So as rural as we are, as poor as we are, to me, it's phenomenal, the collaboration of all the community agencies with the Mental Health Recovery Services Board, working with all the criminal justice entities to be impactful and to be able to help those men and women get where they need to be. Does that help?
It does. And Sandy, I couldn't agree with you more. I applaud the folks across our state and the work that people have been doing. It really has been tremendous. I agree with you.
If I could
Oh,
say
sure,
one
go
more
ahead.
thing. I remember talking to Michael Shanehofer years ago, asking him to go down with me for that lunch. And I remember the 2 main groups of criminal justice and mental health and substance use in the same room. And that hadn't been common. And I remember people getting up and leaving saying it will never work. Now, I drove Mike down, so I knew he didn't have a way home. And when we stayed through that lunch and he heard, he said, I think we can do something. And then he began to work with law enforcement and all the other factors. Well, in the meantime, a woman by the name of Tammy Colon was working at that time with Lutheran Social Services, which became Coleman Professionals later. Lutheran still has its own, but Coleman became the main entity of the area. Tammy is now the new executive director of the Mental Health Recovery Services Board. She had had such a history of working with communities and youth, realizing the involvement of criminal justice over all the years of her work plate. So we could not have a better partner, understanding what needs to be done. We do not hear, we can't do it. What we hear is, how are we going to make this work? I'm
Great.
done.
Thank you, Sandy. In you all's responses, you've answered actually the next question. So I'm going to move on to another question. Where do you need community members to step up, collaborate, and offer resources to fill the bigger gaps? Where do you need community members, and these members are on this Zoom, to step up? And I'm going to ask Director Jackson.
I thought Kirsten was going to go first. But no, in all seriousness though, we need the Reentry community. We need a lot. I would have to say we need a lot, and so sometimes people consider Hamilton County somewhat resource rich, because you can go to a number of places all throughout the day and have breakfast, lunch, and dinner, if you don't have that. But kind of piggybacking on what Crystal was saying about the housing piece, it's a tremendous need. And right now we're kind of trying to figure out a way to identify these private landlords that would actually rent to our clients. And so we need a whole lot of that. The eviction, moratorium, I think that's what they call it, that's going to end. And, if people aren't gainfully employed by that time, the struggle is going to be even greater. And so it's never something that we've been able to fully address and be able to create affordable housing in Hamilton County. There's 40,000. We lost, I think, close to a third of our affordable housing over the last 10 to 15 years. And so that means that I think when they did the housing study, there was actually 28 affordable housing units that were available at the time that they did the study 2 years ago, or about a year and a half ago. So, I mean, look at our population in Hamilton County. That's not going to meet the need whatsoever. So, and the other piece about it is, when you say affordable, that doesn't necessarily describe all of our clients either. They don't have income. It's at zero in many cases. And so affordable isn't defined the same way for a number of our clients. And so we need our community members to step up and say, I have a room for rent. It doesn't have to be big, but we would want it to be safe and clean, but we need that. We need our community to say, here, we'll be glad to rent to someone, especially given the fact that they have these wraparound services because they're working with our office, or they're working with another organization to support them as they come, get into housing. So that's, it's always been a challenge in Hamilton County, and it remains a challenge as far as housing is concerned. So like I said, if people in the community would be willing to say, we have a room, to rent, we have an apartment to rent, we will rent to the Reentry community, that would be a huge benefit for us.
What I hear you saying is fair housing opportunities. Give folks fair chances at respectable housing.
Mm-hmm.
Shawn, when I think about Athens County and the struggles in Athens County, where do you need folks to step up? Where do you need our community members to step up and collaborate and fill these gaps?
Well, I think a big thing, and what I'm hearing from a lot of people coming out of recovery and of prison, is that there's a lot of anxiety into the communities they're coming into, because they may have been in prison for 2 or 3 years and they're coming out into a whole different world. So the big thing would be the understanding of what they're going through, and also experiencing poverty and the lack of resources that most of us take for granted. The majority of the people in our field and that we work with are strongly middle class. We have middle class standards. We have resources. We might be thinking about how are we going to refinance our house and save a couple $100, and the guy down the street's trying to think of, well, what friend can I call tonight and whose couch can I sleep on? So it's to understand that there's a disconnect between middle class and poverty, that you kind of work with the person you're with, be mindful of them, listen to their challenges and listen to what they're going through, and show understanding and help decrease their anxiety. A quick story, I had a girl that just got out. She was in 5 years, went to Walmart. She was trying to maintain 6 feet with the mask. There's people in Walmart without a mask. There's people that are kind of coming up on her. She got so anxious she had to leave because she wasn't sure what the social norm was now, because she had been out of society for so long. And that's a great example of what a lot of people returning from prison are going through, is just trying to reinvent their social skills and reinvent how they interact with people. So if I think if our community members are patient and understanding and just whatever they can do to help out.
Thank you, Shawn. Crystal, can you share a little bit about, from your perspective, what do you need the Cuyahoga County community to do to step up and help assist your office and all the wonderful organizations that your office helps fund?
Yeah, sure. So again, I can't echo enough the sentiments of my colleagues. Normally I would say to my left and my right on a panel, but I guess virtually in this space. But I think one of the other larger challenges in Cuyahoga County that exists is our business community. We have a great business community, and despite of the fact that we have experts who are formerly incarcerated who know how to tell their stories, it's not their stories that always resonate with individuals in our larger community. Even when they get the opportunity to hear it, people are often disconnected and they have a very difficult time understanding equity. And so I think right now it's a great time to pivot because of all the structural challenges that are finally being brought to the surface about things that have been so uniquely ingrained in our system that it's very hard to see on its face if you don't live it, breathe it, or if you're not the person who experiences it on a daily. So what better population than to kind of talk about the equitable challenges with our business community, not just for a job. I think someone had mentioned, it might have been Trina earlier, what's affordable kind of depends on where you are, right? We already know that $15 is just enough to kind of sustain you at a bare minimum in the state of Ohio, just to make sure you're eating and have a clean space to be in. So we often use this tagline during reentry week for us that it's not just about returning, but it's about thriving and advancing. And the only entity that can provide that is the business community. To not just, the greatest form of self-sufficiency is to make someone else self-sufficient. It is plenty of entrepreneurial spirits. It should be plenty of opportunities to invest in them and their ability to be entrepreneurs as well and have a real taste of the American dream. Everybody doesn't want to be, your cook. Everybody doesn't want to be your host, your busboy, and no knocks to those who get out there every day and do such a difficult job. But the idea that we put people or place people where we want them to be is a part of the problem. And we think that they should just be happy with that. And I know I go off on a tangent, so I will this back in a little bit, but even a criticism for ourselves. I always dissect what we can do better. And there's no office is perfect, and certainly not ours. I feel like I do the best I can, but there are often times I can do better. We fund one particular housing model. We have a very small budget, and the housing model is good. It's been around for a long time. When it first came out, called Open Door, it's very unique. It's had a couple changes in leadership, and we've done some newer things with it, but it only has the capacity to serve upwards of 100 individuals a year, maybe a little over, maybe 125 at this point. But we have over 4,000 individuals in our system or in our community who, are tasked with the fact that they have this unstable housing issue. And so, one of the things that I think we do wrong is we get so focused on what we do right that we forget what else we need to do. And so I think the other challenge sometimes too is one of the parts of that program that made it so good for other people, they were really interested in studying it when it first came out, was the fact that it's a partnership embedded in this with our public housing system. And if you complete the housing program, you get like first dibs at public housing. And so we also can't get comfortable with the idea that you got in public housing, Are you comfortable with being in public housing? Are you comfortable with your mother being in public housing? Is that your dream when you were little? I want to live in public housing. And it's great as an American to have these safeguards that other countries don't have. So it's not a criticism in that respect, but again, it's just always remembering it's not just about the return, it's about the advancement to thrive and just be able to live as human beings, really detaching stigmas, really focusing in on what does it mean to be equitable and really being able to utilize the community that has that at their fingertips. And it's not the healthy human services industry. It's not the criminal justice industry. I can't pretend to know enough about something in a space that I don't know. But what I can do is be a strategist because that's what I am. And so I can't engage though only so many ways without you re-engaging with me. So that's when I like get jealous of my counterparts because they have support sometimes I don't have. But that is what I would need in Cuyahoga County with that very long message. Sorry guys, you gotta cut me off sometimes. Pull the mic from me, Rodney.
No, Crystal, you gave us some great nuggets. And I thought about some of the things you said, and especially about they just don't want to be a cook. And Kirsten, I think about oftentimes juveniles get pigeonholed into certain areas. So when you're thinking about this in the juvenile population, what comes to mind for you? What do you need?
Well, what we desperately need when we can open up, we're in the planning stages of creating a virtual engagement platform and policy so that we can bring many of our volunteers back virtually into our community, I mean, within the correctional facility. But we really need mentors who are going to be there to walk with that youth when they get out into the community. It's really easy for people to come in and hang out with the youth. But what we really want to do is have meaningful engagement. The engagement that we're looking for is the engagement that is going to pay dividends or return on the investment of this youth's time while they're in the facility. We need, but we also need that same opportunity that Crystal mentioned, that, you know, our youth have a lot of skills, talents, and abilities. They could run this whole Wahova and Zoom very quickly. I mean, they are IT savvy, but oftentimes what happens is they get pigeonholed into McDonald's, and because that is a teenage kind of job. But our youth are coming out at the age of 18.3, right? They're spending a longer time in our facilities. Our average length of stay is like 17.1 months now. So we're not, you know, so it used to be 6 months turnaround, a year or whatever, but they're staying longer. And we are releasing folks at, you know, as I said, an average age. So it's just not, even though, you know, we know that their frontal cortex is not developed and they're still youth and they're still kids. But oftentimes they come home to a community or a family member who's on public assistance. And if they get a job, their income is included in their family's income because they're not at the age of 20. So they are kind of put in between a rock and a hard place. Well, I need to get a job because I've finished school, and we all know that youth with idle time, that's not a good situation. But I have finished school because it's mandatory that you go to school while you're in the facility, and so we have school. We have the Buckeye United School District for all three of our facilities. And so there are young people who are out here who are looking for opportunities, and they don't want to be that cook. There are sometimes that they know that they have to get their hustle on so they can move through and also go, and they have aspirations to go to college. And so being able to do virtual tours, we used to be able to take kids off of the grounds and take them onto school grounds to do tours, and now we have to do virtual tours. But we have situations where, you know, youth can't go home because of whatever was placed in their adjudication and their record. They may not be able to go home either because of domestic violence or because of the fact that they were either a perpetrator or someone in their home. And so housing, there's a true need for transitional housing for youth. An opportunity for our youth to be really, truly to step down, to have some kind of guidance, but at the same time, really being able to work and prepare for their lifelong journey. And I agree with Crystal. Not recidivating is not enough. What we have to make sure is that people have a quality of life when they come home. So just avoiding getting arrested is not living, not surviving. And what we want our youth to do is thrive, not survive. And we want them to be members of the community, become contributing members of the community, raising a family, and seeing their kids go off to college, and having grandchildren, and really making a stable go of it. And so we really need our community to understand that all you need to do is really, if you have a program that that is successful, we prefer evidence-based programs, but we know that if you have a program and that it works, in order for it to even get to evidence-based program, it has to be innovative at first, right? We don't want to do evidence-based programming to the fact that we push innovation out of the equation, right? Because how do you get evidence-based? You had to start somewhere, right? So we're looking for programs that are promising and that are innovative and that are engaging. And we really need mentors who are willing to do that one-on-one walk with that youth into the community, and not leave them when the doors open and they go home, and looking for housing, looking for opportunities for employment, and really just having somebody to really talk to them and be there, right? And be there, be that steady, be that constant, because so many times they've had so many people in the community, in systems, that said that they're going to do something and they don't do it. And so they don't trust. And then you are like, well, I don't know how I can get their trust. Well, you have to earn their trust, just like you would expect them to earn your trust. So, and I think those are the really foundation, and to come with an open mind and an open heart, and to really see the youth for the fact that they are a youth, right? Restoring the value, the dignity, and the respect of all individuals who are coming out of correctional facilities is the first step.
Ronna, you were muted. I didn't hear what you said.
Oh, I'm sorry. I said, Sandy, do you have anything to add? Did you all hear me then?
Yes.
Okay, I'm not sure. Sandy, are you still there?
I am. I'm right here.
Okay. Okay, great.
I can tell you that honestly, we've gotten employers that have been willing, because Mark Paulus and others have done a fantastic job with that. It's not that we don't have problems here. We do. Collaboratively, it's been very, very helpful. We haven't had a lot of youth that have been reaching out to us. I just know that they are going to agencies in the community, and I think they're still being referred for assistance to the Mental Health Recovery Services Board. I'll be quite honest with you, the area we could really use a great deal of help with is in the faith community. Now, we do have an excellent church up on North Metcalf Street, the Methodist Church, that does a lot of reentry work. There's more that can be done, because it's that relationship connection. People are coming back, they're nervous. The community is so different than it was before they left. And to just hear a friendly voice, see a friendly face, have a person be invited to go and meet them at church, meet them at a support group meetings, things such as that. That relationship connection would be incredibly valuable. We do have a lot of work, as I said, with one local church in the northern part of Lima. There are also some churches that offer support groups that are wonderful for individuals that need that. But the connection of being able to infuse some faith in their lives, whatever that denomination is, would be a wonderful thing in our area for sure.
Thank you. And Sandy, you actually answered the last question that we had from Reba, but we have about 5 minutes left, and we do have a question that came in from Jody Davis. And so I do want to give you all an opportunity, whoever wants to answer this question, to answer it, because I think it's a great question. And Jody is talking about, how do we maintain relationships after release when there are laws or policies that don't allow that in many cases? And we all know, we hear that a lot from the Department of Corrections, that we have policies that kind of restrict people at times from maintaining relationships. So Jody wants to know, how do you maintain that relationship after release, and especially after you've built relationships with people for many, many years? Sandy, are you answering?
Yes, I can offer one piece. This is what we have done. We have a 24-hour day, 7-day a week hotline number for somebody that needs help. And so even if it's a person that's been released recently or a person that's been released for years, they can call into that hotline number. They may not be suicidal. They just need a friendly voice. And not only is that hotline a number available, the reality is that person on the other end can also reach out to an agency or a person in another area to help connect with that relationship. I got a phone call yesterday about a person who has been out of confinement for months and months and months and doing exceptionally well. And the phone call was, she just needed to hear a voice because she was struggling. We gave her 35 seconds, checked in with her today. She's not perfect. She's doing so much better and connected with another agency. So that's how we've used it.
Sandy, I'm going to ask if you would put that hotline number in the Whova community so folks can see it, since we're having trouble with our chat. Anyone else, before we wrap this up, anyone else, how do you maintain relationships or keep connected with the folks that you've built relationships with and built trust? Because as Kysten talked about trust with, when there are policies and procedure and laws that don't allow you to.
I don't know if I can go. I mean, I think it's just different depending on where you are in your position. So I want to be able to give that disclaimer. I think for government, we have to be very careful in terms of boundaries. So with that being said, I'll use a different hat. I had the opportunity to be a fellow for Just Leadership, maybe a cohort ago. And Deanna Hoskins is a formerly incarcerated person. She allowed people who had never been incarcerated, but who had direct experience through family members and friends to be a part of this unique opportunity. And one thing that I noticed she manages really, really well through Just Leadership is her ability to re-engage alumni. And how she does it is through opportunity. She includes them on national panels. She asks if you want to be speakers. She sends out new positions and opportunities. As she modifies Just Leadership, she engages her alumni to, provide their perspective on what could have changed, what could be better. And then there's even financial stipends or new opportunities. So it's that method of engagement, which is actually through a formal process. Therefore, you cannot get in trouble in that capacity. That I think is almost a model that she could create for many when you think about alumni engagement. And that's one way to keep yourself safe, but often know what's going on with the people who you once served, see how they're doing, and if something is going bad, provide new opportunity for them.
Thank you, Crystal. Oh, no, Kysten, I was going to say, as we wrap it up, if anybody else would like to speak, please.
No, I 100% agree with Crystal. I think that if you have, formed organizations, just nonprofit or just an organization that is familiar with the facilities, and know your work and know that you understand the boundaries and the requirements for conflict of interest. It happens very often. I mean, those, I think that the organizations and government organizations, mostly the facilities, are understanding that those closest to the problem often have a solution, but lack opportunity to meet with the people to be able to give them those nuggets that they know. So I think that more and more as we see these organizations like Just Leadership and other organizations are coming together and organizing, that is going to be less and less of a problem. Basically, we got to make sure that people follow the guidelines. That was basically the issue, and not necessarily people coming together to do something untoward to another folks.
Thank you, Kysten. And we are actually out of time, unless Director Jackson or this Shawn Stover, unless either of you have any last minute words you want to say, I'm going to close it out.
The only thing I want to say, is, to that, just that question of the idea of having mentors that are, I think it's such a big advantage if they have this understanding of cognitive behavior intervention, because it kind of aligns with what sometimes are people that are incarcerated are already getting while they're there. And if you can create that continuity of support for them when they get out, I think, that will be a tremendous advantage for everybody in there. And the last thing I just want to say is that I am so, no matter where I go, I'm always so proud, and I brag a lot about Ohio overall and all the reentry offices and the people that run them in Ohio. And I just thank you, everybody who, is involved in this work. I mean, our reentry offices throughout Ohio are amazing. And I'm just excited to be and proud to be a part of that. So thank you.
Thank you. Shawn, any last words?
No, I think everything's been said. I just appreciate this opportunity, and especially Reba Collins for putting this together. And this is what we need, more of this kind of community outreach.
I could not agree more. So I would just like to take 1 minute and just say thank you and express our gratitude to Crystal Bryant, to Trina Jackson, to Sandy Mumford, to Kysten Palmore, and to Shawn Stover. You all are true rock stars. You really are. And I know it because I get to work with you all the time. But I'm so glad that other folks had a chance to see and to experience the knowledge that you all have provided us with. You all said some key things, but I'm going to leave us with just one phrase. And Crystal Bryant, this is because of you. Crystal said, not just returning, but thriving. We want to leave folks with an opportunity to thrive. And so I applaud you all for helping us on that mission. And I thank our attendees for being a part of today, and for and we're going to challenge you all. You all heard these folks say what they needed. That's what we need. And so we're going to challenge you all to help us in this mission. You can reach out to any of these presenters on the Whova app through Messenger. Thank you so much. God bless you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So Ronnie, are we supposed to leave? Like leave meeting, or because at first she said don't leave, but there's no end button. I'm trying to find an end.
Yeah, I think you leave the meeting, but I'm not supposed to end the meeting, I think, until Reba comes back.
Ah, okay.
So, and I'm just making sure, I'm double checking the notes here.
All right, I have to hop on and get prepared to facilitate. You did a fantastic job. I only hope that I can do as well as you did.
Oh my gosh, Kirsten, you all are an amazing panel. I mean, really, the knowledge in this room is unbelievable. And we need to make sure that we continue to tap into this. Like Shawn said, we needed this more than anything. We did. So thank you. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Truly, I'm telling you, juveniles get to be the bald-headed stepchildren, right?
That's right, but we're going to do something about that. We're going to make sure that.
Well, I'm going to make sure that happens, right? I'm going to try to insert myself every conversation, right? If it has to do with reentry.
And there
shouldn't
nothing
really
wrong
be.
with that.
Yeah, and it really shouldn't be a whole, adult, juvenile. We need
Absolutely.
the same things. Reentry is reentry.
That's right. That's absolutely right.
All righty. See you later.
I'm supposed to stop recording now. Okay. I did stop recording.
It still has a little button that says recording.